All right, y'all. First and foremost, give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his son Hamashiach, who some call Yahweh Shai, Yeshua, Yehoshua, Yashayah. We mostly know as Jesus Christ. All right. Got a couple of videos here, brothers. Battle Axes and the brothers IUIC. Using the same tactics because it's that's what's been taught to us and passed down through One West Israelism, through those forefathers out there at 125th Street in Harlem. Same exact tactics. They didn't learn this by reading the text, and we have to be honest. We didn't learn it by reading the text. We learned this tactic because we were taught, and somebody taught us how to teach this way, and it's incorrect. All right. And I'm going to show that proof, and we're going to go through some things that a lot of you don't know. A lot of you, heck, because it ain't being taught. All right, we not. And this one, don't be complacent. I just want to, don't be complacent with your precept packet. Get into the history. Look into the maps. Get into the language. There's so much that we don't know, that we can't really pin down. There's so much that we can be getting into in this text. That's why a lot of brothers be kind of doing the same stuff. The same class is over, but it's still so much that we have to research and look into. Just the example of from 70 AD. How did we get to West Africa? Like, what are the details in that? You just can't give me Babylon to Timbuktu because he said we went north. A lot of you don't even read the next page. He said we went north. And I think he's gleaning that from Josephus. Because Josephus said we went to Egypt on ships after 70 AD. I'm not even going to get into that today, but that's out there. Research it. It's out there. But how did we get to Africa? Some of us saying like what's my brother name? Dante Fortson, brother Dante Fortson. He's saying, well, hey man, we're the Spaniards. We're the Spaniards that were over here in that actually, got kicked out of Spain. And then it's like, how are we the Spaniards and how are we, you know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of holes, it's a lot of gaps, even in establishing who we are. We got to be honest with that. You talking about 1,500 years. What were these folks doing? And to be honest too, is that the Jews do have, or the little hats, or whoever you saying these folks are, they have a long history that's been recorded where they've been certain places, been kicked out of certain places, did good business in certain places. And these things are recorded. So it's just going in there and trying to say, well, is this us, or are we in West Africa? Like, this is us, or are we being enslaved? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, and I'm just saying all of that to say, man, we got a lot of work to do. I don't know how you sitting on your hands. I don't know how y'all think that, scholastically, we the scholars of the earth and all of this, man. It's so much to learn. It's ridiculous. Anyway, again, let me just gonna let it play, y'all. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna be talking about Galilee of the Gentiles. All right, it's gonna be a lot of information that's gonna come out of here, but and I'm gonna try to keep this thing under 30 minutes.
The Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, the word Gentile, usually, read it again, usually, it means a non-Israelite people.
So what does that mean? Usually it can mean Israelites referred to in a Gentile state of mind, or it can usually refer to the real Gentiles. Okay.
Right there, you off. You off. Usually, it says usually it's a non-Jew. And the fact that we got to play with that is insane to me. Usually it's a non-Jew. That means every now and then it could be a Jew. All right, it could be an Israelite. And really, what you're reading is ethnos. You're reading the same word for nations. That same word could be used when you talk about all the nations of the earth. That could be a Jew. So just to play with that word, man, that ethnos, and that's not the only word that gets translated to Gentile. You know, Greek also gets translated to Gentile. Helen also gets translated to Gentile. But this is the one they're using now, is the in the compact, and I'm telling y'all that Zondervan is not your friend. It's just not your friend. And I you know, I did the video about going to Jew in the Zondervan. You go to Jew and read what a Jew is in the Zondervan. It tells you that initially it was just the southern kingdom, but after Babylon, it became the name used for the northern and the southern kingdom. So then, what you gonna ignore that? Oh, that's wrong, and they racist and da 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 woody woo. But I agree with the definition, and that's what I'm saying on this slideshow. Y'all willing? We can get this thing out tomorrow. It starts out with definitions, and so I'm gonna ask you about that, and you're gonna tell me it's Northern Kingdom. I'm gonna want an example of it being Northern Kingdom, and I'm sure you're gonna say 1 Corinthians 12 too. But we're gonna show you the problem with that also. But it don't mean you can't have both usuallys. All right, usually, and then you gotta have one that's every now and then, or sometimes, or a few times. But you can't have usually. Like usually is most times. So you can't have it saying most times it's an Israelite and most times it's an Israelite Gentile. Oh, what? I'm sorry. Most times it's a Gentile and most times it's an Israelite Gentile. And even that terminology, Israelite Gentile, is made up. It's made up, man. You ain't get that from the text. You got that from videos you were watching. And a pre-notion of salvation is only for Israel. And you have to hold on to that so that you end up changing definitions. You end up changing words. You end up retranslating the Bible. That's what you're doing. Let me pull it back.
Read this. This is a Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. The word Gentile, usually. Read it again. Usually. It means a non-Israelite people.
So what does that mean? Usually it can mean Israelites referred to in a Gentile state of mind, or it can usually refer to the real Gentiles.
Okay, so
hold up, do you understand that?
I understand.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
We also know how to infer from a text. We all been in school.
That's right, context.
From a context, okay? So if you have a person that is in a city, and that city is not a city, that's a Jewish city, okay? And we can infer from the text, like Paul, who was not sent to, it clearly said he wasn't sent to the Jews, but he was sent to the Gentiles. Jesus spoke about it because he said, I have a sheep that's over my fold.
That's right.
The other fold.
But hold on. That's why I gave you the definition of Gentile.
Okay,
so when you read Gentiles, it can be referring to what sometimes? Israelites, brother.
I got you.
Let me prove that. Read this.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 4, and verse 15.
And I see my brother, I don't know about inferring, you know, just because they're in the city, but the brother's correct on the other part though. And sometimes this is stuff that scare me because these are things that play back. Some of my memories of, dang man, I was dead wrong. But of course I put the video up and it seemed like I was right. You know what I'm saying? It like I left there triumphant. But I was dead wrong, and I don't know who this brother is. This brother could have been an angel. This sister could have been, you know, sent directly to me, trying to give me warning. And man, I thought I cut that joker to death.
Who is Zebulon? One of what? The 12 tribes. Who is Zebulun?
Let me go back and let y'all hear this.
Prove that. Read this.
Listen to Book of Matthew, chapter 4, and verse 15. The land of Zebulun.
The land of who? The land of Zebulun. Who is Zebulun? One of what? The 12 tribes of Israel. Read on.
Is the land.
Another 12 tribes of Israel going into the northern tribe. Read on.
By the way of the sea. Behind Jordan.
Read on.
Galilee of the Gentiles.
Galilee of the what?
Of the Gentiles.
Of the what?
Of the Gentiles.
Read.
The people.
The who?
The people.
who?
The people.
It's telling you that the northern tribe was called what? Gentiles. Because they weren't keeping the commandments.
That's right.
God cast off the northern tribe for what? Being his chosen people. So if you're not God's chosen people, what are you called? Gentile, bro. That's the history that we're trying to teach you that our people are not being taught. Do you understand about the split between the northern and the southern tribe? Do you understand that history? That's why you don't understand the New Testament. That's right. That's what we're trying to tell you, and I'm gonna prove it to you.
I can know he gets spent around. They spinning them around. It's really not funny, man. And for my brothers, man, my brothers over there, you know, Captain Benjamin Benjamin, you know, all them badass brothers that I've met, you know, they came down to Atlanta, very humble, very, you know, I know y'all see this like this is kind of show like brothers ain't really like this. Like brothers ain't just yelling at and screaming and stuff. No, it's a different energy out there at camp. Then when you actually sitting down and chopping it up with brothers, and a lot of y'all just judging. You just judging what you're seeing on the videos, and it's really the exact opposite. When you actually meet brothers, some brothers, you know what I'm saying, that some of the strongest speakers be some of the have some of the mildest spirits. When you're dealing with a one-on-one, you know, or when you in the group and y'all, you know what I'm saying, when y'all kicking the bobo and so forth. But you know, out there, you know, you got to be. What's the precept? What's the precept that he used? What's the precept? Cry loud. Cry loud, spare not. And that was taught. Even this way of teaching and with this energy was taught. It's something that we mimic and that we seen you know, some of the earlier camps do, and that we, you know, just mimic what they were doing. Because the effect that it had on us. And it doesn't do that for everybody. For some of us, we can handle it. We see that we can, but a lot of people, well, they out there yelling because they can't be taught that way. They're gonna block. Their ears gonna get blocked when they hear that and see that. But anyway, everybody's a little different. But to speak on what he's that Matthew 4:16, him going into the Galilee, and saying that the Zebulun, and because it says Zebulun and Naphtali, in the land of in the Galilee of the Gentiles, then you like, you can't say they scattered. You can't say that they're not in their land. And when did they come back? If Christ is coming there to be a light to the Gentiles, and those Gentiles are Northern Kingdom, that means they never went nowhere. Or you'll have to show me a verse where the Northern Kingdom came back to Assyria and came back from Assyria, from the Assyrian captivity. When did the Lord bring them back into the land of Israel? And it's really not the land of Israel, but it's you know, he's using this verse like it's Zebulun now, and it's not. It's not Zebulun no more. It ain't been Zebulun in a long time. All right, it's in the land of Galilee. Okay, not controlled by Israel. But to say those people there are the Northern Kingdom, but they just don't know who they are. They just Gentiles. Well, why did they come back? What did they come back for? Why are they back in their own land? Like, we got to ask ourselves questions. We got to question. That's what I'm challenging y'all to do, is to question everything that you're teaching. See if there are any holes in it. You're saying these people came back from the northern kingdom, but you also saying these folks went to America. That's a problem, huh? You can't have it both ways. And I see my brothers, I showed y'all that video with Sakari, brother saying that Paul went to America. Trying to make it both ways, but you can't. You have to say that these people who don't know who they are really Southern Kingdom or Jews, you know. But again, like Zonovan tell you, man, Jews was pretty much a term used for all of them. This Israel period. It ended up being a term used for Israel, according to the Zonovan. If that's what you trust, you just trusted it to show this brother that usually, which you mutilated, usually, and that's it. That hurts you. Gentile is in the text. Well, that Gentile right there is in the text 96 times. That Gentile that you read that chapter from is in the text 96 times. It's converted. That word's converted to Gentiles. It's converted to like nations like 50 something times. But you used it for the word Gentile. How many of them 96 times is a Gentile? Really, that you can show that a Gentile is a natural Israelite. It's really an Israelite. And I don't think you can, to be honest. But that's going to be on the slideshow. Show me the verse. Like you pull out that and you saying that that's the northern kingdom sometimes and the other nations sometimes, you'll show me the examples. And if these are examples you'll use, you know, I'll accept it, but I don't agree with it. 1 Corinthians 12:2. I think he's going to go here next. Hold on, let's go in.
Again, hold up. Let me give you another scripture. Give me 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. Bring it up. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 11. Bring it up. Let me show you. Because it's hard, because guess what? Like Captain McAbee said, you have been brainwashing. It's hard when you, guess what? Kicking against the pricks. Read this, book of 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. Ye know that ye were Gentile. Read it again. Ye know that ye were Gentile. What's your name, brother? What's your name? What's your name? My name is Captain Benaniah. So how can you be a word Gentile if you're always a Gentile?
Again, this is a tactic. Why you reading half the verse? Why you saying, why you were, usually were, and you're not reading the entire verse. And again, this was taught, because if we just read this with our clear conscience and no pre-notions in there, we would know. Ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away unto dumb idols. You're still a Gentile. You're just no longer carried away to dumb idols. How do you know it's still a Gentile? Because Paul calls them Gentiles throughout the text. He never calls them Israelites. You don't see this dialogue at all. You don't see Paul going to these people saying, man, y'all finally Israelites again. Now you're Israelites again. Now the Lord is you know, he grafting you back in. Well, I ain't gonna say that. Because that is in there. In the Romans 11. But he's never directly speaking to these people. And even in Romans 11 is a little indirect about these fallen branches. And I don't, you know, even with the Northern Kingdom, they didn't even did they even get to witness Christ? To even unbelieve. And there is some heavy evidence. There is a lot of stuff that we don't know about that Northern Kingdom and where these folks were dropped off, and it's in the text. And I'll bring that out a little later, maybe a little later in the month. Just remind me, y'all. But yeah, we'll have to re-examine this whole Esdras and us crossing of Euphrates and what the crossing of the Euphrates means and so forth. All of this stuff has to be challenged, and then we bring forth the other information about Hamath and all of this stuff that where it says he dropped these people off at the Northern Kingdom. But I haven't seen a passage where the Northern Kingdom came back, and I've seen brothers try to use the Hezekiah be in that verses before they actually even got taken got fully taken out of the Northern Kingdom. He was inviting them back down to keep Passover. But the other main point that he makes with this is that because they weren't keeping the law, or because they was in idolatry, they got called Gentiles. And if that's the case, the text tells us, the Most High tells us that Judah did worse. Were we Gentiles when Moses came down from the mountain and we was out there worshiping, dancing around that bull? So we making up narratives. Yes, they were punished and cut off, but just like Hezekiah was saying, Israel wanted them to come back in. Pharisees searching for these people. So I just don't understand. And then we have the example of the sister from the tribe of Asher that's inside witnessing the circumcision of Christ. And prophesied, already knew that he was coming. All right, so is she cut off? Was she not cut off? Why is she in the temple? Why is she kicking the bobo? Why is she even in the story at this point of the story? But this stuff ain't adding up, y'all. This stuff ain't adding up, and we having to change this. But again, you know that you were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. That's what changed there, is that they're Gentiles, but they're no longer carried away unto dumb idols. I'll give that example. I can make any example up, man. You know how you used to be a black man. You used to love them white women. Man, boy, you know how you was a black man. You used to love them white women. Is his nationality? He done changed? No, what's done changed is that he no longer dealing with white women. So it's, I know you was black man, you used to love that pork. Boy, but you used to love that pork. You still a black man. You just don't eat the pork no more. You still a Gentile. You just don't deal with these idols anymore. And how do we know he's still a Gentile? Paul continues to call them a disrespectful name, like a Gentile. How could Paul love his brothers and still just call them Gentiles? How could the whole council of Jerusalem think, hey, you know what we gonna do with these Gentiles? Wait a minute, bro. They done came in. They done came into the fold. Why are we still calling them Gentiles? Anyway, just something for brothers to think about. And like I said, and then I think the brother's finna go to Ephesians 2. Say you were Gentiles in the flesh. The same methodology applies. And then how you gonna say, like, if a Gentile in the flesh is literally a Gentile? I don't get it. Just like I said, Israelite in the flesh. My brothers, Israelites in the flesh. Like, my brothers in the flesh, like that's going directly to like bloodline. So it's problematic. But again, it's mental block. Maybe a spiritual block. Because we're locked in on the pre-notions. We have to let the pre-notions go and reevaluate this text.
What is this text talking about, brother? Answer my question. What is this talking about? Read it again.
And he asks us, what is this talking about? He only read half the verse. Like, that ain't, are we, like, we got to be honest, man. You're reading half the verse. Now, he is finna read the whole verse now, but, doing them first sector with the brother scratching his head, he done got spent around. He done got put in the washing cycle. Y'all, we ain't gonna make them 30 minutes.
Again, you got to pay attention, brother, because we having a dialogue to get some understanding. Read this,
First Corinthians 12 and 2. Ye know that ye were Gentiles. Read it again. Ye know that ye were Gentiles. Read on. Carried away unto these dumb idols.
That's what made them Gentiles. The northern tribe, because they was doing what? Worshiping idols.
We've always worshipped idols. We always did it. There ain't a time in the text that we didn't do it. And so we would all be called Gentiles if that's the case.
against God. So by default, they were called what? Read this.
This is a thundering
All right, now that's not all we have, y'all. We got our brothers from IUIC. They popped up too, and we'll put that in.
Matthew chapter 4 verse 15. The land of Zebulun. So Zebulun is one of the tribes of Israel. Read. In the land of Naphtali. That's another tribe of Israel. Look, read. By the way of the sea beyond Jordan. Read. Pay attention, Mark. By the way of the sea beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The sea, so if you look on a map, it's a sea of Galilee. And you had Zebulun, you had Naphtali, and what was the other tribe? You had Asher around there. You had Zebulun, Naphtali. Those are tribes of Israel. But what did it call them? Galilee of the what? Of the Gentiles. Galilee of the Gentiles. So why is it calling Israelite tribes Gentiles, Mark?
See, and the reason it's these tactics I taught the same because this is what we were taught. This is the information, and this is what we had to use to establish this. And that's what y'all have to understand. If that Gentiles is there 100 times, you got 2 verses that you're using to try to reestablish that all these Gentiles here, and when it's saying something good, I know it used to be the methodology from GMS. Hold on. Apologies. That used to be the methodology from GMS, is that if it's saying something good, then it's for Israelites. But if it's a Gentile and it's saying something bad, then it's a regular Gentile. And that was the methodology. All right. As far as now, it's kind of winded down to just them 2 verses there. And of course Romans 9. Let me go ahead.
See, that's the problem, because the Israelites were scattered.
And then to say the Israelites were scattered, but you're reading it and you're telling us that Zebulun is back in their land. That Zebulun is in their land. They just serving idols, but they're in their land. And this just shows that we don't know what happened between Malachi and and Matthew. We don't know that history. We're not studying that. We don't know, man. We don't even know how the land became Galilee. Why is that land called Galilee? You should know why it's called Samaria in the man Shemer. And how are they selling this land? But we're going to get into it today. We're going to get into it today. All right. But I just want to show you kind of the same tactics they're going to use. Oh, well, he came to the light to be a light. And then you have to go back to Isaiah 9. Or the Isaiah, what is that? 49? Isaiah 49:6, but he's quoting Isaiah 9 there. And look at that. But also the Isaiah 49, whose brothers is tripping up on. We're going to look at that too. I got a video with that too. Isaiah 49:6, it says, and he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the preserved of Israel. That should be the totality of Israel. All the tribes and the preserved. All the tribes and the preserved. He says, I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that my salvation, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth. Okay. That thou mayest be my salvation. That'll probably be on there. That thou mayest be my salvation to the end of the earth. I want you to answer, like, what is that? What is the tribes of Israel and the preserved of Israel? What is that? And then what is the Gentiles there? Just to see your answer. Again, it's just me evaluating. I may go over free will if you give me the permission. Well, you go over them. I may go over them, y'all. I gotta pray on that. I gotta pray on that. But if you send them to me, I'ma ask. Do you mind if I go over your answers on live? And show you what I think. Anyway, let me see. Let me share my screen here. We're gonna read some articles on how Galilee became Galilee. Very important that we understand how Galilee became Galilee. How did Galilee become Galilee? Very important information. Hold on here. We'll go here first. This is a Catholic source. We were just gleaning from information, but you're gonna see it add up here in Jewish Encyclopedia and some of these other sources. Galilee of the Gentiles. Already in the 8th century BC, the prophet Isaiah referred to the territory as Galilee of the Gentiles, a phrase which will be quoted in Matthew 4:16. Isaiah may have been referring to an event mentioned in 1 Kings 9:10 through 13. There we read that Hiram, the king of Tyre, had supplied cedar, cypress, and gold to build the temple of Jerusalem. To repay him, King Solomon then gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. 1 Kings 9. I know y'all familiar with that. King Hiram, helped get supplies to rebuild the temple, and Solomon rewarded him 20 cities. 20 cities in that same area. What my brothers are saying. That the northern kingdom came back from the Assyrian kingdom. And the story of Hiram is the first of two rather disparaging references to Galilee in the scriptures. Solomon's gift did not please the king of Tyre, so he said, "What kind of cities are these which you have given me, my brother?" And he called them the land of Cabal, good for nothing, as they are known to this day. For the 600 years after the Assyrian conquest, much of Galilee had been all but abandoned by Jews who concentrated on rebuilding Jerusalem and Judea. Like Samaria, Galilee saw foreigners, in this case Phoenician farmers and Greek mercenaries, employed by the Persians. Among its new residents, apparently not the result of any intentional efforts by various ruling powers, none of whom introduced a substantial number of colonists. All right. They were using it as farmland. Greek mercenaries and Phoenician farmers who were employed by the Persians. Remember, the Persians came in and took over the Babylon, and then pretty much released everybody for the most part. And again, they said they employed people to go farm that land that's desolate. Okay. Jewish resettlement of Galilee proceeded very slowly until the reestablishment of Jewish rule in the 2nd century BC. What happened during the 2nd century BC? The Maccabean revolt happened during the 2nd century BC. If you don't understand that, and that's why I keep telling y'all about this Hasmonian dynasty. If you don't understand what's going on there, you don't know what's going on in the darn New Testament. You don't know the political and the social climate that's going on. You think darn Zebulon's still in their land and still kicking the bobo. No, that land got reestablished. It got resettled after John Hyrcanus and his son Alexander Jannaeus and some of these other people. And I may got them names mixed, but they went and conquered Aristobulus. They went and conquered Samaria. That woman and that woman at the well, she's saying our fathers told us we used to worship up here. We went down there and destroyed their temple. That's the beef. That's why they won't allow us to go through there. We just had these people, we subjected these people, and we conquered them, but we didn't convert them. We considered them trash. Also, the that we pushed forward into Galilee, and whoever was there, we conquered. Got them up out of there. Put them, subjected them. But didn't watch this. I take that back. Didn't really get them up out of there. But did bring them into subjection. We'll see some other stuff that they did. Watch this. Jewish settlement proceeded very slowly until the reestablishment of the Jewish rule in the 2nd century BC. According to the evidence of archaeology, there was a sudden change at the beginning of the 1st century BC. Within a few decades, dozens of new villages appeared, indicating that a new population had come into Galilee. By the 1st century AD, Galilee included 204 prosperous villages and 15 fortified cities, according to Josephus, Vita 45. All right. Nazareth versus Sepphoris. This is just going into two cities here. Nazareth being the poor city, Sepphoris being a more Hellenized, rich city. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna need that. But matter of fact, we'll read the first two paragraphs. It says the town of Nazareth was where Jesus was raised was on the outskirts of one such city, Sepphoris, the administrative center of Galilee and the home of the region's prosperous Jewish elite. Nazareth was a working man's town in the shadow of Sepphoris, of no importance to anyone but its residents. When the Lord's disciple Philip told Nathanael that he had found the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, Nathanael responded, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" The cosmopolitan and deeply Hellenized city of Sepphoris. All right. What is a cosmopolitan? Who eat cosmopolitan ice cream? All right. This city was a cosmopolitan and deeply Hellenized city of Sepphoris. Is never mentioned in the Gospels. Jesus is never depicted as going there, although it was only 3.5 miles from Nazareth, and none of his closest followers are said to have lived there. Instead, the Lord spent his time in the call of disciples from nearby working class towns of Cana and Capernaum, where he found the poor in spirit, people more likely to accept his words. All right, so that Sepphoris, it was a prosperous town. It was a cosmopolitan. There were many different shades of people that lived there, and it was very Hellenized. All right, but Jews have repopulated these areas, and they're in these some of these working towns here. But like we've seen, these other folks are also in these areas also. I go down to foreigners and Samaritans. It says archaeologists suggest that the population of Galilee at the time of Christ included transplanted Judeans. What is a transplanted Judean? They joined with many Gentile Galileans, Phoenicians and Greeks. All right, many Gentile Galileans, Phoenicians and Greeks, and Idumeans, whom some scholars say have been forcefully converted to Judaism. If so, Galilee in Jesus' day contained many Jews whose ancestors had only been Jewish for about a century. All right, a lot of those Jews, and I'm gonna tell you why them folks went up there. We gonna get into why did Idumeans, why did converted Edomites go up there to Galilee? I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you. It's Herod Agrippa II. Herod Agrippa, I want to say the first, son of Herod. He was given control of Galilee. He was a tetrarch of Galilee and Perea. All right, you got to understand who the Herodians are in the text. Okay, a lot of the Herodians were converted Edomites. And they've come into the fold. They're Jews. They're Judeans. This is why the text, this thing is telling them that these folks are transplanted. A lot of these folks have been transplanted and been put there, for certain reasons, and to just live a better life, to get a better opportunity made. Even with why Joseph went there to went to Nazareth to raise Christ. Just trying to flee and being afraid of Jerusalem and the politics down there. That they still may try to kill my son, still may try to kill the Son of God. So yeah, they was only and that was done by John Hyrcanus. He defeated he conquered Edom, conquered Samaria. His son went into Galilee, started conquering over there, went to Moab, started beating them up. We were getting down, man. We weren't just sitting around just kicking a bobo and just up here afraid of what I tell to. And that's what y'all need to be teaching during the Feast of Dedication. Y'all need to really sit down and read that book, man. That persecution from the Greeks was only 2 years. Bro, Maccabees stood up and said, nah, that ain't it. And then recircumcised all the kids. At the same time, the Galileans were surrounded by native pagans peoples, the Phoenicians to the north, Ammonites and Moabites to the east, Edomites to the south, Palestinians to the west, while their immediate neighbors to the south were the Samaritans. Strict Jews, like the Pharisees, revile all of these people as unbelievers, as heretics, and therefore unclean. All right, Pharisees weren't messing with none of them. They all trashed it up. All right, the Lord Jesus not put off the isolationism of the scribes and Pharisees. Not only did he eat with sinners and tax collectors, he ministered to the Samaritans, the soldiers of Roman occupation. He visited pagan territories such as Tyre, Zidon, where he helped the Syro-Phoenician woman, and Gadara across the Jordan, as we see in today's reading. All right. So let's go to Aristobulus here. One of the Hasmonian kings, all right, was a high priest of Israel and the first Hasmonian king of Judea, reigning from 104 BCE until his death the following year. He was the eldest of the 5 sons of John Hyrcanus, the previous leader. The Roman Jewish historian Josephus states that he was the first Jew in 483 years and 3 months to have established a monarchy since the return from the Babylonian captivity. Aristobulus was the first Hebrew king to claim both the high priesthood and the kingship. The Sadducees and Essenes were not concerned about Aristobulus taking the title of king, but the Pharisees, believing that the king could only be held by the descendants of the Davidic line, strongly opposed this. They launched a massive rebellion, but Aristobulus died before any attempt to dispose him could be made. You don't understand the beef. You don't understand the beef between the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Essenes. You don't understand the political pull that each one of them had on each one of these kings, and how Rome ended up having to take over because one of these jokers ended up calling Rome in to fight the other brother. And how he made them king because Herod actually led the charge to get the other brother back the kingdom. So he go back to Rome and say, well, listen, man, I see what's happening. That I put an army together, and we went and we got so and so back the kingdom, and they still fighting, going at each other's head. He did, and then he's like, man, Rome see him and say, okay, well, we can use you. We'll let you be king over. But of course, he is a Judean. He's been converted, been forced into circumcision. Let's go down a little bit. Let me see. Is there anything else we need from here? Now let's go down a little bit here. Conquest of Galilee. Aristobulus went to war against the Iturians and took territory from them. The conquered Iturians were compelled to accept Jewish law and circumcision to remain on their land. If you're gonna be here in this land, you're going to have to get circumcised and you're going to have to keep this law. And this goes with the text. This is the whole thing that these folks are doing in the text. No, you can't bring these Gentiles in here because they need to be circumcised and keep the law of Moses. They can't come in here. They can't be a part. No. And of course, through the Spirit, man, they had the Jerusalem Council. And they said the Gentiles don't have to do that. But it's not that they're being evil. This is the protocol. This is what's been going on. You want to stay in the land. Listen, you're going to have to get circumcised. You got to do that. But there's little history on this. So we got to be careful I'm gonna get into it though. Y'all will. It's in here somewhere. I forgot where I read it at, but excuse me. He says the Iturians were an Arab tribe that expanded southwards from the Lebanese Bequa into a Golan Heights in Mount Hermon in the 4th century BCE, following the collapse of the Seleucid Empire. And you got to understand that these things were different. You know, some of us was under Ptolemy, some of us was under the Seleucid, some was on the Antiochus, and it was different politics, different things going on. They are first mentioned in Josephus' Antiquities during Aristobulus' first conquest, where Josephus writes he brought over to them a portion. He brought over to them a portion of the Iturian nation. So it is documented in Josephus. Josephus' Antiquities is a quote. Well, his quote. Okay, that's the thing. Josephus is quoting Strabo's Historica Hyponymata. Y'all know I can't read. Pray for me. Originally written by Timagenes, and states this was a kindly person and very this man was a kindly person and very serviceable to the Jews, for he acquired additional territory for them and brought over to them a portion of the Iturian nation, whom he joined to them by the bond of circumcision. So Josephus is quoting him. This passage has been generally accepted as evidence of Josephus' reliance on Strabo and to Timagenes' writings. The exact location of the confrontation and territory of the Iturian occupied are unknown. Most scholars assume that the Iturian territory to be northern Galilee. According to Kenneth Atkins, there's no evidence of forced Judaism in Galilee during Aristobulus' reign. All right, so the only evidence we have of this is from this writing, which also Josephus actually quotes. And then we have this brother here, Kenneth Atkins, saying that well, he's just dealing with there is no evidence of forced Judaism that happened with them, but we know that it's there because we still have evidence of Edom just being converted and put into these different places. All right, you had the Hasmonian dynasty, you had the Herodian dynasty that came right after that, and then us getting up out of there. I think that's it, y'all. With that, yeah, one more article, y'all. All right, Aristobulus called Judah in Hebrew. Listen to it. King of Judea, eldest son of John Hyrcanus, born about 140 BC, died 104. He succeeded his father in the office of high priest, while his mother, according to Will Hazan, his stepmother, was by the will of his father to rule as Queen Salome. And a lot of you don't know that. Talking about, you don't know that Israel had a queen that got the Pharisee, got us right. Y'all do the history. Look into it. I actually got I want to say like a 3-part video dialogue on the Hasmonian dynasty. And a lot of people don't teach on this because it changes everything. You don't get to come into the text and just make things up. You got a story, you got a dialogue that doesn't happen. A lot of us ain't dealing with Josephus. Why we not dealing with Josephus? Why we just want to guess the history when you have a Jewish he got some Greek influence, but you have this Jewish historian from the 1st century. I don't, and not just him, but also Philo, who was a Hellenized Jew. But he ain't lose his identity. He know exactly who he is. So y'all making this thing up with this Hellenization, y'all, you kind of, you're drawing your own conclusion on what a Hellenized Jew was. Just the fact that he's saying he a Hellenized Jew, he's still a Jew. He still knows he's a Jew. Let's go here. He succeeded his father in office of high priest by the will of his father to rule as queen. Immediately after the death of his father, Aristobulus threw his mother into prison, wicked, where she was starved to death. and to secure himself against further danger from his family, he imprisoned 3 of his brothers. Then he ascended to the throne and became the first Jewish king after the Babylonian exile, an interval of nearly 500 years. It's 480 in the other text. Aristobulus was not content with the mere title of king, but endeavored in a brief period of his reign to prove himself worthy of his position. He made war on Iturea, subjugated a large portion of the people, strove to convert them to Judaism, and enforced conversion upon them. This fact, which Josephus derives from Timogenes, a heathen writer, admits of no doubt, although it is not known exactly where the territory of the Iturians were conquered by Judea or Aristobulus. All right, well, we don't know where he conquered them at, but we know that that this was, he pretty much reigned and expanded into Galilee. Places of interest. I think that's all I wanted from this. All right, I think that's all I wanted from this. I know strongly inclined toward Hellenism himself. All right, and he was inclined. Who is this? And see, that's at Alexander. He gradually came under complete control of fleet, and head of which stood Alexander. So I made the queen. Anyway, yeah, that's all we wanted, y'all. So we don't know where them doing Arturians. All we have is what Josephus quoted from this other dude on that. But we see again that we conquered that area and put a lot of and there was a lot of heathen there also. All right, we reestablished it. We resettled those areas. There's also a map I want to show y'all. Hold on. Also a map here that I wanted to show you. Let me get that off of there. And you see here, we see Galilee. Hold on, let me try to zoom in on Galilee. Galilee here. All right, you see Galilee. You see Caesarea over here too. And you see that's in Samaria. But you see where it says Tetrarchy in that red of Herod Antipaphus. Tetrarchy of Antipaphus. He was given charge of this land also. Capernaum is where he says Matthew 4:16 happens. All right, so that he can fulfill this. Okay. Cana is another little poor area next to Nazareth, where he gained a lot of these people from. You got to understand these maps, y'all. You got to be looking at these maps. You see where it says Decapolis. All right, these are cities that have been taken over, totally Hellenized by the Greeks and Romans and Moab, and that's one of the reasons too that you don't hear about Moab and the Ammonites. A lot of these people went full in. You know what I'm saying? Some of them went full in into that Greco-Roman period, into that Hellenization period when they took these over. Like, they've totally renamed these cities. All of this up here has been totally renamed. Totally taken over, totally renamed. All right. You see Idumea under there. And again, we had done defeated Idumea. But you see on the right, they're not talking about Moab and Ammon down here. They're not talking about it. All right. If you look up, you see Syrophoenician, you see Caesarea. You see all these Caesareas. All of these are named after Herod. I mean, not after Herod, but I know Herod dedicated Caesarea, where Cornelius comes from. A lot of Israelites say, man, Cornelius is an Israelite. That land is in Israel. No, it's not. It's in Samaria. That land is in Samaria. And not only that, Herod built that for Caesar. Just like this Caesar Philippi. That's Caesarea Philippi. You gonna come and say that that's an Israelite land? Or are you gonna say it's a Phoenician land? Yeah, you can say that, but that city is built for Caesar. That city is named and built after Caesar. Now it's gonna be a lot of Phoenicians there, but it's a Hellenized city. All right, Hellenized city. So that's all I have for y'all, man. Just to look into these things, evaluate these things. Galilee of the Gentiles was full of Gentiles, y'all. It was full of Gentiles. It wasn't just an Israelite city. All right. And it was somewhere else that I read. It was only like 1,500 people there. Hold on. It was only about 1,500 people like in Nazareth. And again, that's why they were so familiar with Christ. It was like, well, you know. They were like, well, you know, man, that's Joseph's son. Ain't nobody, man. I don't know who you think he is. And this, you know, because they had a lack of faith and they were familiar. He couldn't really bless none of them. He couldn't do the miracles that he did in other lands. And he said a prophet will be hated in his own town. All right. And that's because that Nazareth, it was a very small. Also, you remember when Peter was saying, "Hey, he was rejecting Christ," and you know, I think it was like the third time, said, "Man, your speech betrays you." Peter had an accent. Peter had an accent. He didn't speak like Jews. And even again, more so, I would say when you understand this stuff, you understand why stuff is moving away. Why stuff is moving away is moving between Antiphas and who was that, man? I can't even think of the brother's name. Who's the ruler? He said, "Man, I wash my hands with this, man." That man, that, you know, he got the dream from his wife. His wife had a dream. She told him. He was like, "Man, I wash my hands with this." I forget the ruler's name, but he was trying to send Christ back to Herod Antiphas because, you know, Christ was considered to be a Galilean. But yeah, you know, you start seeing all this other stuff. You start realizing more. It helps you with the text. It helps you understand the text more, where we're not sitting up here saying that, you know, oh, well, it was Zebulun and they called Jews, and we just trying to assume that Israelites are back in this area thriving, and that the northern kingdom has come back. No, even when it's been resettled, it's resettled by those that came from that Babylonian exile. We don't know if the northern kingdom came back from that exile. And if they did, they did. But where would they settle if they came back? They're not going to settle in Samaria. So more than likely, they'll settle in Judea. More than likely. Or Galilee. Northern kingdom will probably settle in Galilee or Judea. But if they're coming back from that land, but that's only if you know, you're not dealing with the narrative of them going to America. If you're dealing with that, it's over. If you're saying they went to America, it's over. They just not even there. But if we're saying they're in play and they're coming back, we definitely see the sister from Asher in Jerusalem. And I think Galilee will probably be another spot also, especially if they can't really get nothing popping in Judea. I could see them going to Galilee, you know. So I could see it, but not the way y'all see it. Not the way you see it, and not the way they being called Gentiles. Because why would they be called Gentiles if they coming all the way back to the land? If they coming back to serve the Lord? And then you're saying in Second Esdras that they left to serve the Lord. They left to go somewhere to serve God. So it don't add up. The math ain't mathing with that. And we just got to do a better job in that and try to figure this thing out. But people have been trying to figure out where the Northern Kingdom is since they left, brother. Brothers and sisters, people have been trying to figure this thing out since they left. So we got to be careful with talking in surety. And we have to just re-examine these things and put all the information on the table and try to navigate this thing. All right. Last point too is that, again, you had the point where this thing was desolate. You had the point with the Assyrians pulling out the northern kingdom, and the point with the king Hiram being given 20 cities in Galilee. And you can deal with all the rest of the stuff of the conversion of these Arab people and bringing these people in. And just the fact that narrative is even there in the first century is damaging. Even if they don't know where they did it at, it's still damaging the fact that a heathen is writing that Jews converted these Iturians, converted them and forced them and added them to his nation. That's damaging. Just for that thought to be there, because you're acting. And then that's another thing. I'm gonna close on this, y'all. I'm gonna close here. All these Old Testament only Israelites, they believe in salvation for these other nations. Unless they've, there's a few that have they've come out of one West Israelism and start teaching and deny the Messiah. And we got to deal with that also. That's something we gonna have to go head on with too, is these splinter groups that are splitting off and denying Christ. But most of them, besides them, because they can still have that mental block of these pre-notions that they've taken for one West Israelism. But some of the older ones, like the House of Shema and some of the older ones, they not having them issues. They see that Gentiles can come in and be a part of salvation, and serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So I don't know how they see it, and we don't see it, and we anyway. Pray this thing was edifying. Y'all be blessed. Shalom.